about Gregory was that he was curious. Now, everyone is curious about what's going on in his own world, but Gregory was curious about things he'd never seen or felt or even dreamed of. I must be happy with what I have, he kept telling himself. After all, it isn't everybody who can live in the nice oozy mud and play in the dark all day long and sleep in a nice boot. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Gregory was a grub, a fat, ugly little grub. And he lived in the mud at the bottom of a pond. To be more specific, he lived in a boot in the mud in the nicer section of the pond across the street from an old automobile tire, which made a beautiful municipal park. The cultivated seaweed gardens there were the pride of the West Side Chamber of Commerce. So Gregory should have been satisfied. But the thought kept nagging him. Is this what life's all about? Is this all there is? Now, the top of that pond was blue and had lily pads on it and buttercups and daisies around it, but Gregory didn't know all that. He didn't even know such beauty existed, for in his wildest dreams, he had never dreamed up anything as beautiful as a buttercup. Being a grub wasn't so bad when you'd never been anything else and didn't know any better. Of course, it could get rather tiresome. You couldn't see where you were going half the time, but then nobody else you knew could either. It was really his curiosity that started Gregory out on his mad, wild adventure. He was playing with his best friend Pete. They were tired of playing starfish trek and were sitting on the rim of a tuna fish can, dangling their feet in the mud. It isn't that I mind living here and saying when you're dead, Gregory said suddenly. But is that all life is about?
Uh-oh, said Pete. Are you thinking about that again, Greg?
I can't help it, Pete. Do you suppose there is something else that we don't know about?
I don't know. You strain my brain with all your dreaming. I know I live on the wrong side of the seaweed and go to public school and have snapping turtles for teachers, and you go to a private school
and I have crabs for teachers. I know, Pete. But no matter where you go to school, and teachers aren't crabs if you obey. You can dream, can't you?
Uh-oh. You got those feelings again.
Yes, I expect I have. I just can't shake off the feeling that this isn't all there is.
Of course this is all there is. This is life. What more do you want? You have the pond and everything in it, hills and valleys and forests of seaweed, a life to live and a pond to conquer, and your good works to leave to the posterior, to
posterity, Pete. That means the people who were born after you're gone.
Well, anyhow, that's what eternity is, Gregory. Leaving your good works to live after you. Don't go off the deep end with all this stuff about some other life somewhere.
Gregory heaved a big sigh that made ripples clear to the top of the pond. And that's when Mr. Frog came along. When Gregory first saw him, he jumped an inch, and an inch is a long way for a grub to jump. Oh, Mr. Frog, you startled me. What's up?
I've just come from a trip into the other world.
Gregory's mouth dropped open. Pete listened, his eyes bulging out. The other what?
Didn't you know there was another world? My, rivet, rivet, rivet.
The two little grubs were flabbergasted. There is, they both said together.
Of course there is,
said Mr. Frog, feeling very important.
I go there often. Rivet, rivet, rivet.
Oh, Mr. Frog, tell me about it. What's it like? Mr. Frog settled himself for a chat.
You just can't imagine how wonderful it is. It has flowers and grass and fresh air.
Fresh air? What's that?
Be quiet, Pete, and listen. What else, Mr. Frog? What else? And could you take me there? Mr. Frog thought for a minute.
I can try, he said at last. Get on my back. Do you think you can?
Think I can? I'm on already. And he squiggled up and settled himself. Let's go!
Oh, don't go, Gregory. That frog is loony. Stay here with us grubs.
But Mr. Frog and Gregory were gone. Gregory could hardly wait. He was so excited when Mr. Frog came up out of the water that he... Oh! Something hit poor Gregory in the face. It was fresh air. He saw spots. He couldn't breathe. And before you could say buttercups and daisies, he fainted and fell back into the water. A little later, he came limping back to where Pete and his friend Charlie were playing Mumbly Peg.
What's it like?
Pete wanted to know.
Is there really such a place, Greg?
I don't know. I never saw it. I fainted, I guess. I'm still seeing spots.
There, you see, there's no such place. That proves it. Now, I hope you've learned your lesson, Greg, and I hope you're satisfied.
And they thought he had learned his lesson. He said no more about another world. And so, a few days later, when he said he felt as if he was going someplace, they thought he was only fooling. But when he started to crawl up a bulrush toward the top of the water, they were alarmed. Had this business really affected his mind?
Greg, do you have that feeling again?
I have more than just a feeling. This time I itch. I itch and itch. In my back.
You do? Then scratch.
It's no use, Pete. I've scratched and scratched, and it really doesn't help a bit. And I feel all quivery inside. I've got to go, Pete.
Good grief. Gregory had climbed up so far he was nearly out of sight.
Don't go, Greg. We won't tease you. I'll scratch your back even. Greg? Oh, good grief, he meant it. He's gone.
Yes, Gregory was gone. He climbed to the very top of the bulrush, up, 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 to the top of the water, and then stuck his head out. Phew! He was dizzy. Oh! His back! Oh! It was breaking open! Ouch! Wings! He had wings! And a body, too, with all the colors of the rainbow. It was unbelievable. Then, what was he doing? He was taking off. Say, this was great. And the next thing he knew, he went zooming up in the air, and from there he could see across the pond, across the meadows, flowers and trees and birds and bees. Oh, boy! And then he got stronger and braver and tried fancy stuff like dive bombing and figure eights. Oh, it was wonderful. More wonderful than anything he'd ever dreamed of. And then he remembered. He'd promised Pete and Charlie he'd surely go back and let them know if there really was another world. And he dived, nose down, just as fast as he could, toward the water, and... Phew! What hit me? I didn't know water could be so hard. Maybe I didn't fly high enough. Yep, this time I'll get a good start. And he did. Up, 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 in the air, and... Oh, no, this time he knocked himself out. And when he came to, he was seeing double.
Maybe I can just peek in, and I'll yoo-hoo down until they hear me. I'll just stick my head in.
And he did.
Yoo-hoo! Phew, I can't breathe in there. I guess I just can't breathe anything but fresh air. I've changed so, I just can't go back.
And then he saw it.
Hey, there's another fellow and he's flying just like me.
And sure enough, there was.
Wait a minute. Wait for me. Can you tell me what I am, please? Of course. Don't you know? You're a dragonfly. I am? Oh, who'd ever think I'd come to anything as wonderful as this?
And they went darting off together in the sunshine across the meadow, back over the pond again in their bright new world. Poor foolish Pete. And Charlie, too. They couldn't believe what they couldn't see. Of course, this is a make-believe story. Those little grubs will all become dragonflies whether they believe it or not. But with us, it's different. We have a choice, and what we become does depend on what we believe. The Bible says that whoever believes in Jesus shall have eternal life.